Joseph, mate, thank you for coming on the show. Super excited to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, mate, absolute. You actually, funny, let's just give a little bit of a backstory. When I moved to Australia, so you're originally a Kiwi as well, right? We both obviously seen something bigger and brighter out there in the big wide world, and funnily enough, we both landed in not Surfers Paradise, but in the Gold Coast. And I remember walking into Fitness First, my first day of Fitness First at the gym when I was a personal trainer. Geez, that feels like many moons ago too, mind you.
Ages ago.
One thing I think, you haven't lived unless you've been a personal trainer. I think that's what I'm finding these days. Everyone's a personal trainer or have been one. So I walked in my first day of Fitness First, and I seen this real tall dude, lean looking dude, and I was like, he looks like he knows some stuff. Right? And you were doing shit in the gym that I'd never even seen before. I was like, what is that type of exercise? You know, I mean, I come from that reading bodybuilding magazines, and I thought that's how you have to train. And then I seen someone like yourself doing heaps of different weird and wacky type movements. That's what I thought at first. And I was like, I've got to pay attention to this guy. Right? So, you were arguably, in my perspective anyway, you were definitely the most educated personal trainer, right? At that time, you were working with some amazing people, doing some amazing things. But mate, I want to ask first of all your evolution into that, right? Like what got you into personal training first, and what landed you at Fitness First for us to connect?
Yeah, man. So first of all, appreciate the kind words. So what got me into fitness is crazy. I came over to Australia, like I was playing you'd call it semi-professional rugby league, right? Tweed Seagulls. And I didn't really, when I first got there, I didn't really have a job. I worked as like a delivering beds, like beds that adjust and go up and down for old people. So I did that for a little while.
Right.
Sold them for a little while as well. And then I was like, there's got to be something better out there than this. At the same time, when I kind of had enough of that, I was doing some labouring and also some contract teaching. And then I went into, maybe I get into some personal training because I don't really like digging holes for 12 hours a day or you know what I mean? And I'm really interested in health and fitness and so on. And so, man, I went into Fitness First and talked to the manager there. There was a guy, I forget his name, but he had you had leases there, like a 12-month lease or a contract there that you as a trainer had to pay Fitness First to be there. And he wanted to get out of his. And so we came to an agreement where I bought his business or took over his lease.
Right.
And he had like maybe 30 or so clients, and I'm doing like little speech marks when I'm saying that I'd take over and start running. And of those 30, they were all just like contacts, and of those 30, there were maybe 2 people that actually paid the bloke. And so I go in there and take over a lease, and then started figuring out and hustling how to actually pay the lease to Fitness First and make money out of it. And I started, man, some days I'd, depending on what I was doing, I might be labouring for the day, and then I'd come in afterwards and take sessions, or I'd be contract teaching, depending if a school gave me a call. I'd go and do the substitute teaching or whatever, contract teaching, and do the personal training before or after that school session started. So I just set up the personal training around that. And then when it got enough or big enough in Fitness First, I could, I could do away with the labouring, the digging holes, or carrying mud and that sort of things, or going to school. And I probably enjoyed the personal training a bit more than teaching, because I wasn't just, I love PE teaching, but I wasn't just teaching PE. I was having to teach math or science.
Yeah. I mean? Now all the secrets come out. Our maths teachers didn't really know fuck all, right?
Something like that.
Mate, so you went down a different route, right? Like, you can become a personal trainer. Like most people, they become personal trainers, and they do the minimal viable amount to train people. But you went down the rabbit hole of really learning about the body and going deep, which was sort of what attracted me essentially initially to you, was you were doing things differently, right? So what took you down that quest for, I guess, knowledge in the space? Because, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, because not every personal trainer gets to train the Chinese Olympic team, right? So there's some things that you've had to do, throughout this journey to be able to land yourself with those massive opportunities. So where did the initial, you're a personal trainer, you're training some clients, now I want to know some more. Like, what happened around that period?
So, man, predominantly selfish reasons. Like, I'm always interested in how I can help myself. And I'm like, if I can't help myself, I can't help anybody else.
Yeah.
So if I can't make my body change and get lean, or if I can't make my body get bigger, say if you're a personal trainer, I'm probably not going to be able to help people come in the door that want to use my service. Well, I can't help people run fast or get strong or whatever if you're an S&C coach. Same deal. So if you can't do that yourself, then maybe you can't help other people to a degree. So, that was the sort of thing. It was like, look, I want to learn more about this. I've always been interested. There's always, and I enjoy like the actual learning process of obtaining or acquiring new skills, or like that. That's one of the things that I really enjoy. And, it's still to this day, I enjoy picking up new stuff or gaining new knowledge, or maybe that's just a wiring in me, but that's definitely one of those things that I'm like, I really like learning. I like understanding things better, or I like being able to go from juggling 3 balls to juggling 4 balls, things like that, you know what I mean? I like picking up skills.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely found a gravitational pull towards that. Like, I think it's the old philosophy of the more you start to learn, the more you realize you don't know, right? You go to the standard, here's those air quotes again, the standard personal trainer out there, you go and do your course, you learn nutrition, which is you basically learn your what's carbs and what's fats and what's protein at the surface level, right? And then with training, it's like, 3 sets of 12, 3 sets of 10, the standard things that's getting just thrown out there to the general public. But when you start understanding, hormones and why our body does, the certain things that it does when it reacts to X, Y, Z, and it just becomes this a massive pot of confusion almost, I remember things that, because, I remember paying you as a coach to show me some of your, I was like, show me what I don't know. Right. And to this day, I still use those principles, and I love that learning aspect of it, because it's just it's probably one of the things that I do outside of, running and building businesses. My fascination about that is the human body, right? The human body and the human mind, because it's just such a crazy intertwined connection of things that happen. But you went down the Charles Poliquin route first. Was that the first sort of induction for you that opened your eyes to training isn't what I maybe thought it was?
Man, the first one was just the Fitness First, like internal seminars. Well, to be fair, I went to like University of Otago, and I did like one paper was like elite training or elite athletic training or something like that, and that was based out of like New Zealand Academy of Sport at the time. Yeah, and so I was like, wow, there's some cool stuff out there in training that you can do and so on. And then what happened when I got involved with Fitness First, like Donald Carr was his name, and so he was a big time Czech practitioner, whatever you want to call them, and a really knowledgeable guy. He used to run the internal education Fitness First, that you could go along and do seminars with him. And so I picked up heaps of stuff from that, and that really opened my eyes to start with, and gave me like, I still think of some of the things I learned, like say Paul Chek's Eat, Move and Be Healthy books. They're great. I thoroughly recommend it. Yeah. And then I started looking into Charles Poliquin, and he probably aligned with sort of where I wanted to go in terms of around the athletes and a bit more sports performance. And so went down that route and really got stuck into that for a while. And then from there, you move into other areas, like went into just ASCA, Australian Strength and Conditioning Association, and those type areas, and did some sort of professional development through them. So, but it's, man, you raised such a good point before. I always say it's like an inverted view of knowledge, right? When you start, things are real simple. Yeah. It's like 3 sets of 10 for hypertrophy, 4 sets of 5 for strength, That's all you need. Real simple.
Yeah.
And then when you know a bit more, it's really, really mystical, magical.
You start throwing in time under tension, and then it's like, oh, but 10 reps at 5 seconds a rep actually puts you into a different training zone than 10 reps at, so it becomes it, like you said. But that's what I loved about it, because, and here's the other part though, right? I think the majority of the population will be able to respond to just bloody moving in general, right? But it's when you start to hit those plateaus and go for that extra level of performance, which is obviously what you do. I mean, you're working with people, professional athletes, where a split second could be the difference between a gold medal or a silver medal, right? So those improvements really do matter. Did you always want to go down that route of training like highest level athletes in the world, or like at what sort of stage was it your decision to go into that sort of space?
For sure. Basically, I was like, if I can't be a pro athlete myself, I might as well hang around with them, right?
Yeah, everyone's dream, yeah.
And work in that environment. So yeah, there was probably always a definitely a motivating factor. And then obviously I had some sort of business motivation as well, and I enjoyed running a small business and getting into that. But no, definitely a big driving thing for me was to work at the sort of pointy end of the sport. And I'd say I'm probably, for me to help like a general person with some health or fitness, I wouldn't be really good.
Yeah, you're wasted.
Or not wasted, I'm just maybe I'm out of touch, or I'm just not aligned with this type of thing. It'd be much harder for me than it is, say, working at say where I've worked at the moment, just because I guess I've been there for a while now, and you're just used to thinking a certain way, and sort of like how you say the generalizations. You're better off just moving a bit more. You're like, okay, how do I actually break that down and present that to people and get that behavior to change?
Yeah, you must love the difference of, when you're a personal trainer and you're training general pop. The hardest thing is just getting to do what the fuck you say, right? Like you create a program and it's like, okay, here's all the sets, here's all the reps, here's the rest periods. But all of a sudden you don't do a 90-second rest period and you're into like 2-3 minutes. You've just fucked the entire training protocol, right? Like this whole program is designed around specific times, which elicit specific hormones during rest periods and all of those things, which most people obviously don't understand. So it's almost like the highest level side of things is too complex for that general population. But you must love, and I'm making a big assumption here, but I'm pretty sure it's accurate, that professional athletes, you tell them what to do and they will do it.
Yeah, no, man, I'll tell you something. One of the best things an S&C coach who works with athletes can do is go and work as a personal trainer for a while, because professional athletes will get paid to do what they do, but for you to get them to do what you want them to do, it's a big difference.
Right.
And so there's the same things that go in with like motivating somebody. Like I actually think, motivating somebody to come back and seeing you and getting results for them from the come back and seeing you in a user pay environment teaches you the skills that you need to have to work with like elite athletes, world's best athletes, because you have to motivate them, you have to manipulate them, not manipulate them in a bad way, but manipulate them into thinking that you're the guy that they need for their continued success. Otherwise, they won't be there long for you and you might be out of a job. So there's these, I'd say it's the same stuff exists. It's human nature, whether you're now instead, and the thing is now, instead of you doing this off your own bat in your free time, you know what I mean, outside of work, now it's your work, and it's something that you're employed to do. So there's you do it so much. Like think of how stale you can get in a working environment. Do I have to do that? I mean, rather than, so there's you get all these different continuums and stages of how engaged athletes can be, and man, experience I've picked up from actually working in like the user pay environment. Personal training people where my bread on the table is depending on them coming back for the next session. But those are good experiences, and it teaches you a lot.
Yeah, well, they're survival methods, aren't they? Really, you're right. It's because you're not thinking every single day when a client's there, oh, you got to come back, I've got to keep them coming back. It's sort of that natural, habitual, here's the things that I know that I've been able to do over time that have made people come back. So yeah, you're right. I'm sure it creates that, that hardened skin, so to speak. And yeah, I probably really haven't thought of it like that. I'll just expect athletes who are at the top of their game to get out there and perform and do what they have to do. But, you're right, they're only humans. And if anything, they've probably got more pressure on them, and the more pressure that gets put on your shoulders, the easier sometimes it is just to go, whew, I'm just going to offload all of that.
Yeah, right. For sure. And also working in China, so the same sort of thing, but now China, everyone's like, Chinese man, you must, like, so the S&C coach is saying to me, man, Chinese, you must just be able to tell them exactly what to do, and they'll just go, boom, out there and do it. Exactly the same as in Australia or New Zealand. You got to work them. Yeah. There's different like athletes within a team. Some are more compliant, some are less compliant. Some couldn't give a rat's if you're there or not. And so you've got to work them and get to know them and
I'm sure there's that language barrier, right, as well.
Yeah. Well, that makes it even bigger.
Yeah, definitely would. Sure. You'd be able to drop F-bombs. I don't know what F-bombs are. I'm sure that's a worldwide universal language, I think. Yeah. Mate, how'd you get the gig? I'm super curious because you reached your sort of limit within the gym. You ventured out. You started your own business, your own conditioning company. Had a number of trainers working within you. Servicing the local community, etc. Where did you? Well, I guess how did you stumble upon, or how did you get the opportunity to put your hand up for the Chinese Olympic team?
Yeah, man. So what happened was similar to that professional development stuff, I'd been doing sort of FMS and SFMA, some courses, professional development courses. And on those courses, I met a guy called Greg Day. He was a teacher on the course. He's a physical therapist, physiotherapist. And he ended up getting a contract with a company called Exos, or it was Athletes Performance at the time, over in Shanghai, working with like a Shanghai provincial sports. And there, what happened was Exos, or Athletes Performance, used to contract. They contracted different national sports teams, different sports teams. They run a lot of NFL draft, combine preparation. So the 40-meter sprint or 40-yard sprint, they're experts at that. And so they'll get all these players in. They also contract out. So the German World Cup team, soccer team, they contracted their Exos. Chinese Olympic Committee did it in 2012. And what actually happened, they were going through these negotiation stages with the Chinese Track and Field Company, Chinese Track and Field Federation, wanting like a physical coach for their sprinters and jumpers. And I'd done a bit of work with sprinters on the Gold Coast, and basically Greg reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in this role? I've just got our international director here, and he's asking if I know anyone. And I'm like, sure, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Let's have a chat. And then what happened, that job didn't eventuate. But within the next month or two, like I was on their radar, and a job came out with the Chinese Olympic Committee in like their institute, would be like Australian Institute of Sport, the same thing. And a job came out there, and I got the nod for that. So that's how it happened.
And what did that look like? So was it just a sort of a short-term contract? Is it, hey, you're going to come over here, you're going to work with the team for the next 8 years, for the next couple of Olympics? What was the sort of initial premise of it?
So there were contract cycles, right? So our contracts were tied to the contract cycles that Exos had with the Chinese Olympic Committee.
Right.
It was supposed to be until the Rio Olympics, basically. And I went over there late, probably third quarter 2014. But the contract cycles ended up running yearly, and yeah, that was how it worked out.
Well, what was your feeling when you landed in China, right? You're like, oof, I'm in a totally different country, right? and you're like, geez,
Right.
I'm here, and the responsibility, because you know how important it is for them to hit medals, right? I'm sure there must have been a lot of pressure on your shoulders. What did that look like the first few months there?
Man, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. It was crazy. Just the environment.
Yeah.
Beijing. When I landed there, it started getting really cold. Like winter in Beijing's terrible.
All right.
Yeah, like maybe you'll get highs of like -2 type thing. So
it's not like the Gold Coast. We've got a high 22 today.
Winter. Crazy, but man, and really polluted. So that was a big shock as well. And I knew about that, and then just it's a real austere environment, and then just learning the sort of mechanics of what our role was, where we sort of fitted in, and how we should work with teams. Because what happens is we'll be there, the Exos team will be there, and teams will say, hey, can we do some work with the Exos staff, or can we have an Exos staff given to us, and they can work with us. And they'll talk to the high-ups in the COC, and the COC will say, hey, go and work with wrestling, or go and work with weightlifting, or go and work with table tennis. They're important sports. And then basically how it works is the more important a sport is, the more likely you're going to get allocated to them. So table tennis, more likely you're going to work with table tennis than you are with wrestling, because table tennis wins gold medals like year after year, wrestling doesn't. So, and then there's all these sort of political things that go on. It was a big learning experience, and definitely one thing that did actually help me a lot was having run a business prior and understanding things like checks and balances and sort of contract negotiations, all that type of stuff. But,
so literally you were there, and you were there to be used as a professional resource to help whomever in the squads. Is that right?
Yeah, just like an S&C coach at the AIS, at Queensland Academy of Sport, something like that. So a team will come in and they'll be like, hey, we want to get some servicing from these S&C coaches or physical therapists we have there, and can we organise this? So
what were you doing with table tennis players? Like what? Like the general person would probably be going, oh, what sort of strength and conditioning do they need to do? Now, obviously, if you haven't seen a table tennis match, they're like flies moving around that bloody table. They move around a lot. But what was the general session or training protocols for a table tennis player?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, well, my experience with table tennis, I worked with the women's world champ for quite a long period.
Yep.
And then also did some work with the men's national team. They actually transitioned. They were one of the few teams that had their own private Chinese S&C coach. And he retired, and they were transitioning him to another person. And then I was there to help him for the first 2 months of this transition, this new S&C coach. So, man, in a nutshell, table tennis, prepare their wrists, elbows, lower backs, so they're a bit more injury resilient. You can train some sort of speed and power because it's such a speed sport, and then also endurance. There's a whole heck of change of direction endurance. So if you can imagine running like a 3 meter shuttle going side to side, doing that repeatedly, there's a whole heap of that. And then the lower your heart rate can be while doing that, the better your decision making and the better your anticipation and reaction will be when you're actually playing. So I'll give you an example with this female world champ. I'd basically just flog her for maybe 3 to 5 minutes. So her heart rate would get up to like 180, something like that.
Yeah.
Stay there. And then in her recovery, I'd be hitting balls at her. So she's, you know what I mean? She's experiencing stuff under really high heart rates. So there's that type of those type of considerations around training, like a racket sport, like table tennis or badminton would be similar.
Yeah, makes sense. So your table tennis game must have picked up.
Yeah, no,
you must be pretty good.
Man, I had the absolute pleasure. He's a former gold medalist, but he's a coach now, and I had like 2 or 3 sessions where he coached me a bit.
Yeah,
because I was up on the floor there and so on, and I'd have hits with, like, he was the men's world number 7, and he spoke a bit of English, and had hits with him, and even with this girl, like I could be hitting as hard as I can, and they'll just hit it back to my sweet spot all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. But yeah, they're just little things like always look across the table, things like that. Your back should always move like forward rather than in a vertical plane.
So moving forward. So actually, give me some tips here. We've got a tennis table here in the at work here. I'm currently just quietly, humble brag, sitting at number 1, but I know I've got massive room for improvement, right? I've got room for improvement here. I want to get these tips before the team listen to this podcast and they steal the tips away. But you're right. The beautiful part about this is sometimes it takes little micro changes, right? Even about you just saying right now, don't, like when you're look over the table, I'm like, I want to go out there and practice that right now because I can see how there's logic within that, right? Mm-hmm. So give me make me a better table tennis player. Let's go.
Well, yeah, right. Well, the first thing is most people start in the middle of the table. Don't favor one side. You know what I mean? So you've got equal reach.
So stand in the middle of the table.
Well, yeah. Start in the middle of the table. So there's no like. Otherwise, if you're like always favoring your forehand,
yep.
You're going to have to run round things and so on, which can be a strategy if you've got a really good forehand. But the biggest ones I got out was a couple of things around serving and hiding the ball behind your body when you're serving.
Right.
And then also putting different types of English on it. And then also, looking basically across the other side of the table and not following the ball all the way to your back. Because the reason why they do that is it wears out the eyes. If you're doing it, they might train they might be hitting balls 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And they have things that they put on the eyes that they lie back, sort of like in a spa that helps refresh their eyes and things like that. And then the other one is the back should travel forward.
So it's more elbow. So it's more from the elbow, the movements, and wrist versus just wrist or whole arm type movement.
We could have elbow and wrist traveling like vertically, but it wants to be like a combination. But generally, they'd say that. And obviously there's different shots too.
Yeah.
But generally, if you're hitting like topspin, the hand and racket wants to be moving forward when you're hitting it.
Right. Backhand. That's probably my weakest point. It's my strongest in tennis, but my weakest in table tennis. What backhand tips you got for me?
So same thing, and then you just have to put in the time. So here's one. You can like literally just play the whole game backhanded. And then you'll like, you know how you'd run around a forehand.
Yeah. Now
start running around backhands just to get good at hitting your backhand.
Yeah, there's no real shortcut, is there? It's reps, sets and reps, like everything, sets and reps. Yeah. Mate, what have you learnt, or what sort of has changed in your mind over the last, let's call it 2-3 years with your newfound knowledge that you used to think was accurate, but actually isn't accurate in the field of, strength and conditioning, nutrition, etc. What's changed in your mind? Something that you held to be true that now might not be, or that you don't believe it is. Maybe the newfound science or something that you've tested yourself. Anything?
Yeah, look, I'd probably say what remember when I was going, when you start, it's real simple. Then it gets all magical and mystical.
Yeah.
And what I was going to follow with, by the end of it, when you really acquire the knowledge, it becomes really simple again.
Right.
Bruce Lee's got a quote. I love it. It's like when I first started learning martial arts, a punch was just a punch and a kick was just a kick. When I started mastering the art, a punch became more than a punch. A kick became more than a kick. When I finally mastered the art, a punch was just a punch and a kick was just a kick.
Yeah, I like that.
There's this like inverted U, and there's things like, say, strength, for instance. Like you can be as strong as you like in the gym, but maybe that won't transfer to what you're doing in the actual sport.
Mm.
So there's, and I'd probably say one of the things that I really like, I think of now, and it's like I tell everybody this, is like, what would my grandmother say if I said to her, "Hey, Grandma, I want to get faster"? Do you reckon she'd say, "Hey, do more heavier squats"? Or would she say, "Go to a yoga class because you need to be more flexible"? Or would you say,
"Go run"?
Chiropractor? She'd probably say, "Go and do some sprinting."
Yeah, go and run. Yeah,
it'll probably make you faster.
Yeah.
So I always frame it like, what would my grandmother say is the first thing?
Yeah.
And so getting back to that, it's like, would my grandmother say that sprinting will help? Squatting more will help my sprinting or help my basketball. And maybe, yeah, but there's limits to how much transfer you get. So I wouldn't say it's wrong, because it's still important to be strong, and it can still benefit in performance and help against injuries, all those types of things. But just the philosophy and how I look at things, the lenses have changed a fair bit. Instead of only looking at things through a gym-based lens, and what we can do in the gym to sort of make you stronger, and jumps in the gym even. It's now looking at things in a more also ecological or like holistic fashion, and being simpler.
And it's more, I guess, putting someone in that specific scenario, right? I mean, when I first started in the gym, there was that, don't do a lunge, like don't let your knee pass your toes, because you're gonna fuck your knees up, right? And then I'm watching you do some lunges. You got people on an elevated bench leaning their knee as far forward as it can possibly bend past the toes, and I was like, there's some conflicting information here. But when you think about it, yeah, right. But when you think about it, it's like, well, if your knee can do that and your ankle can do that, maybe your body is designed to do that, and maybe you're going to be put in a position one day where you need to do that. But if you've just trained to a certain limit, you're weakening your ability to actually be more mobile in everyday situations,
Sure.
Mate, what's from a training? You're still training the Olympic team, or what's happening right now with you?
No.
Obviously,
so what happened was in mid 2016, I basically lost that contract with the Olympic Committee.
Okay,
and I kind of went full circle, and Chinese Track and Field actually offered me a coach's contract.
Right.
So the job that I kind of originally was sounded out for, I ended up getting it like almost 2 years later.
Oh, nice.
But working directly for the Chinese government, basically. So I did that for Rio, 2017 World Champs. After 2017 World Champs, like I'd had my first daughter in 2016, just after the Olympics. So I came home after the Olympics and had about 3 months at home with the kids, and then it was just really hard. I'd come home when I was in that second stint after the Olympics. I'd come home every 4 to 6 weeks for like a week, and it was just too hard on sort of family. I'd bring the wife and the kid out to China for like a week in the middle of that, but it was super hard. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So I came back to Australia. I started a PhD, and I was working out of a high school as like a director of athletic development, doing like track and field stuff and helping them out there. A high school called Lindisfarne, just in below the Gold Coast border, Queensland border. And then UFC, which is where I'm at now. The UFC is like the mixed martial arts promotion, right? They decided to open up a performance institute in Shanghai, China, and so they one of my friends is actually the vice president of performance for the UFC in Vegas, and he basically asked me if I'd be interested in running it, and I said, yeah, sure, let's chat. And I ended up getting that role in March 2019, but we've been talking about it for maybe like a year prior.
Awesome.
Maybe longer. Like start of 2018, I would have been like sounded out about it. Went over there not until late May, because I had another kid, this time a boy, at the start of May 2019, and then was over there for like 2 months, and then then I went back and brought the family over back to Shanghai, and so we've been living there up until January of this year, when we went on a little skiing vacation or snowboarding vacation in Whistler, Canada, and haven't gone back yet, just with COVID and international borders being shut down and all sorts of stuff. So we're actually still sitting in Canada.
So you actually made it out of China before it broke?
Yeah. We had a planned trip.
Wow.
My wife's Canadian, and we met up with her family, parents-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, in Whistler.
Wow.
And then after that, we went back to their place in it's a place called Salmon Arm, BC. And so we're still here. I've been in this time, I've gone and worked in, say, Auckland, New Zealand for they had a UFC there in February, and then I've done sort of 3.5 weeks out of Vegas at the UFC there. But mainly, I've just been stuck here in Canada since that time. We're still waiting on the Chinese government to open up borders so that foreigners can come back there. It's just like Australia is. If you're not a citizen or permanent resident, you can't go.
Even if you've got employment.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So even if you've got employment, you can't go back there. So if you're outside of the country, think of, say, maybe a person in a they've got a United Kingdom passport.
Right.
They're outside of the country, they wouldn't be allowed back into Australia, regardless of whether they have employment or not right now, at least in my knowledge.
Right.
Just because they're not a citizen, a permanent resident, or a family member of a citizen, potentially. Yep. So, yeah, same thing in China.
Crazy.
And, yeah, it's great.
So what have you been doing the last few months then, other than going stir crazy?
Man, there's a heap of work on for the UFC in terms of things we're doing behind the scenes.
Right. What's some inside scoops?
Yeah, well, if you're interested in the UFC,
but I love the UFC.
Yeah, cool.
I think the rest of the podcast can be about UFC. So everyone, if you're not interested, no, I'm kidding. There'll be some more stuff, but let's go UFC for a second. So
the main thing I've been doing is the UFC. They released a journal. The Performance Institute released a journal in 2018, I want to say, and it's basically like a cross-sectional analysis of the UFC fighters. How strong are they in the different weight classes? How fast are they in the different weight classes? What's their VO2 max like in the different weight classes? How do you set up your training for a fighter?
Right.
And one of our jobs with the UFC is to help educate like all MMA and combat sports. That's one of our sort of driving philosophies, I guess, is to help bring up that sort of floor of education.
Create the super athlete, right?
Yeah. Because what happens is the UFC loses money every time an athlete misses weight or gets injured in a fight. You get a refund on a pay-per-view or things like that. So, or people won't buy as many pay-per-views.
Yeah.
Or they won't go to the gate and go into the stadium to watch the fight.
Or the fights aren't as interesting. They gas out in the first minute, and you're like, oh, that was a fucking terrible fight. I love it.
Exactly. So one of the things is, hey, we've got to educate all the MMA coaches and athletes out there at the moment. So we're not going to tell them what to do because they've still got to coach themselves, but we'll give them information that we have, and hopefully they can use that to make themselves better and less likely to be injured, more likely to make weight and so on. So,
and how does that work? Do the athletes come to you? Is it sort of like hey, we've got this institute here, feel free to use it if you want to, athletes, or is there sort of a requirement from the UFC that's making them go and get the extra help? Or
so if you're a UFC rostered athlete, there's 2 performance institutes around the world, one in Vegas, one in Shanghai. If you're a UFC rostered athlete, you can use the facilities.
They're top of the notch, right? Would that be some of the best facilities you've worked in?
Yeah, easily.
Yeah,
easily. Right. Phenomenal. Like as good as like English Premier League.
Right.
Facilities.
What sort of technology's in there that's popping right now that you're like, holy shit, I can't believe we've got this thing?
I don't know. Like I find certain things like pretty cool. Like we have these things like force plates. Force plates will tell you like how much force you're putting into the ground. We have things like linear persistence transducers, which are things that measure how fast certain movements are. There's movement analysis stuff like high-speed camera and video analysis. There's things like float tanks, cryotherapy, sleep chambers, hot cold pools, saunas, steam room.
What sort of improvements do you see from that? So like, float tanks and cold therapy and so forth, like from a rejuvenation, recovery process. Well, what's your sort of philosophy around that stuff? Obviously, everything I've read and seen is, they're great, but I mean, you see it firsthand.
Mm-hmm. It depends. One of the biggest things about recovery is your subjective feeling towards how well that is going to benefit you, or how much that will benefit. So if you believe that getting in a cold pool is going to really help your recovery, guess what, Brad?
It's going to increase. Right, the placebo effect, right?
Yeah.
Which goes to show, right, the power of the mind is far more powerful than the physiology.
Yeah, well, there's obviously physiological things that happen there as well, but your perception of what a recovery technique does is really important. And we design our recovery, we have a recovery timetable, like it's a periodized recovery timetable. So after a certain session, we want an athlete doing this type of recovery.
Yeah.
After another different type of session, they're going to be doing a different type of recovery. But we design a lot of that based on the athlete's perceptions of what they think benefits them and what they really like. So there's a guy out of, he was at the ARS, now he's at the Brumbies, but this is his wheelhouse is recovery in pro collision sport athletes. And basically, like say if you get in hydrotherapy, which is great for you, no matter whether it's hot or cold, it'll help with calf circumference. So it'll help reduce swelling in the lower leg, no matter what. But benefits to other things almost entirely depend, they're all over the show. The mean ends up to basically be there's no benefit, but some people get heaps of benefit, some people don't get any benefits, and there's a range between that. And then whether you got benefits or not is really closely tied to whether or not you believe that it'll give you benefits. So say, for instance, if you believe cold water is your thing or you believe hot water is your thing, if you jump in cold water, it might not, and you believe it's going to be good, it'll be good for you. If you don't believe it's going to be good for you, probably it might not be that great for you.
I'm so glad you've just said that. I'm so glad you just said that. That means my hot shower every morning, I don't feel bad for having a cold one because I believe the hot shower is helping me a lot.
For sure. Well, I like heat too. I like heat as a recovery.
Yeah.
I like in the sauna.
Yeah.
Makes my joints feel good. I like being in a spa bath, that sort of thing. So that would be recovery options that I'd use. I don't mind the cold either, but I'd probably go heat most of the time.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? That's the way you need to start thinking about it.
Does that philosophy apply when, you got muscle strains and you go to someone and they go, I'll use ice packs, or someone's like, use a heat pack? Like, does that sort of philosophy carry over into that area, or is there a specific, when you do have muscle strains or something actually, outside of general muscular, hypertrophy that's going on, is hot or cold a better treatment for injuries?
Yeah, so I don't want to speak like out of turn because I'm not a physiotherapist or anything, but I'll give you my impression of it. Probably the physiology around injuries and what happens is much more, it's going to have a bigger impact than around recovery from session to session. Just because the injury is more traumatic than the work you would have done in a training session. In saying that, there'll definitely be belief impacts about the method of rehabilitation you are using. So if you believe that electrical muscle stimulation really helps you, it'll help you a lot. If you believe that doing a certain exercise really helps you, it'll help you in that rehabilitation. So there's definitely those considerations.
What do you go to, cold or hot therapy? Like for injuries, what do you generally do?
So when I was just saying hot for recovery, I really like ice. So one thing about ice, the argument against ice is that it's a vasoconstrictor, right? It stops down blood flow to the area. So that means although it'll help with swelling, reducing swelling, but it also stops the things that are coming in the blood to help heal the area. It slows them down, and it slows down the waste products getting taken out of the area because you've made this vasoconstriction. But the thing with ice too, it's also a great analgesic, meaning it's a painkiller that you can use. Like it would be good even if it did no vasoconstriction and you had no other things, just as an analgesic, like taking an aspirin or something like that. It's a nerve number around that area that you can use to control pain and then get some function back. So yeah, look, I like ice. I like it a lot. I don't use local heat myself personally, like a heat pack. I'd probably sit in like a hot tub or a sauna or something like that. But yeah, that's my my personal preference.
Cool. So the UFC, you're talking about basically you've got a task of uncovering what the super athlete looks like, right? And so what can you tell me about the divisions? Who's top of the table? And because you hear these, you hear about the GOAT, right? Who's the greatest of all time, pound for pound, all of that stuff. But you've actually got science now to actually back that up, right? And you're going to have a lot more of it, obviously, as more of these athletes do get tested and so forth. What can you share about that? What are some findings?
Man, so this project is like I said, we're basically putting out things so coaches and athletes can base what they're doing off what we're seeing at a elite level, basically, or at the top of the pecking order. It's a weird one because there's such a high component of technical skill that there's a lot of physical qualities that there's not that much difference between physical qualities between winners and losers, at least from what we currently know.
Mm-hmm.
But the main thing is technical skill in terms of like how good a grappler you are, how good a striker you are, how good are you combining those two facets. And that's the real, and that's the same in all sport.
Yeah.
Like there's certain things that will like predispose you to being good at the sport. So for instance, reach, like John Jones' reach, for instance, his height is something like 196 centimeters, but his reach is like 217 centimeters.
Super long arms.
Super long arms.
It's like Volkanovski.
So he can touch.
Volkanovski's got a longer reach than Max Holloway, who stands, another head above him.
Holloway's his reach is about 1 centimeter shorter than his height from memory.
Yeah,
so that means that's probably one of the reasons why his nose is the way it is. Right?
True.
And John Jones' nose is the way it is. He hasn't been but that hasn't stopped him from being a great champion, Holloway. He's just learned to deal with a shorter reach and adjust to it. But those sort of things predispose people to being good strikers. The longer your arms are, the better you can strike and hit people without getting hit yourself relative to your height.
For the UFC fans, do you think Volkanovski actually won?
Man, I called it Holloway. I actually called it Holloway.
I sat on the couch begrudgingly going, he's lost it. I felt like he lost it. I don't think he took that third round, but hey, you win some, you lose some, I suppose. I actually felt quite dirty because I was like, for once, I've been following the Warriors forever, and they're sort of a team that just always set me up. So the Warriors Rugby League, they sort of just always set me up for disappointment, right? Like I'm an avid fan. I love it. I just always go for them, and it's like they lose. So I'm never really on the other end of the winning, unless it's the All Blacks, right? Where it's an expected win all the time. But I was sitting there, I was like, I want Volkanovski to win. But when I didn't think he actually won and he won, I felt like, I sort of want to claim it, but I don't, because I don't think it was, it's a crazy. But this is to your point, at such a high level, it's the 1%ers, it's the small changes and nuances that can make the difference between a world title or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Sure. And I'd even put another thing there, like just understanding how judges score fights. And that's one thing that, say, Eugene Behrman, who's the coach of City Kickboxing out there, and that like Adesanya's there, Volkanovski's there, Dan Hooker's there. Like, they obviously understand how judges score fights, and they do enough to win the fight.
It was like when Aldo lost the fight to what's his name?
Petty Yarn?
No, the last fight before Aldo.
Marlon Moraes.
Marlon Moraes. So I thought Aldo won that, right? Which I think everyone did. But because Aldo won those last two rounds, it's almost like, to your point, it's like, it's how is this thing being judged? Like what's the actual, what are they looking at? And they say the later rounds actually make a difference, right? So in this case, it clearly did. But so from
any fight you watch of John Jones recently,
he lost that too. I think he lost
he knows how the judges are scoring, and he controls the ring in the later rounds, and it influences judges for sure.
Yeah, it's a crazy sport. I almost wish, because like every UFC, there's always the judge scored it wrong. Like, why not just get 10 judges? Like, would more judges help? Would it create a better outcome, or will it just create more confusion? Or sort of have we tapped out the sort of median of the fight? So it's an interesting one that I'm sure they'll continually work on.
Above my pay grade. Above my pay grade. Knowledge of mixed martial arts.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the other part too. So, what do you know why they opened it in China? Obviously, billion people, 1.7 billion people in China. When are they opening a performance center in Australia? You'd think Australia would be a great place. We got world-class fighters over here, champions.
Yep. So
anything in the pipeline that you know of?
Yeah, well, not for Australia. There's
for New Zealand.
There are other potential performance institutes. One of the big things in Australia, there's already a sort of proven performance pathway to get into the UFC. So in China, there's not really that there. The other things that, like the UFC's we are mixed martial arts promotion, but we sell pay-per-views, we sell advertising, and we sell like sponsorships. Basically.
Yeah, it's a business.
It's a business, and so China's it's a big market for the UFC. We've actually got Zhang Wei Li. She's training in the Performance Institute right now.
Yeah, right. She's fucking badass, man.
Yeah, she's pretty impressive. Talked to her yesterday, actually. She's she's awesome. And so she's like becoming so popular in China. It's raising the profile of MMA, which is great for us. It really is. It's superb. And we that's the market. That's the biggest sort of opportunity market that the UFC as a business sees.
Right. Well, it makes sense.
They'll be up to host promotions there in the near future.
Who knows?
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. Who's the most impressive athlete that you've ever worked with? What stands out?
Sports?
Anything, yep.
Yeah, so he's probably a long jumper. His name's Wang Jianan. We used to call him Eddie. So this guy, I always used to tell him he should go play soccer because he'd be making millions playing soccer. He had uncanny hand-eye coordination, foot-eye coordination, fast. Like he could run on the I'll take it back. So he's just as a frame of reference, he's a long jumper. He used to be a decathlete. He's one of 2 people in history under the age of 18 to jump over 8 meters and pole vault over 5 meters.
Wow.
One of 2 in history. As far as I know. Please correct me out there if I'm wrong. Some track and field stats aficionado.
Sounds good enough to me, man.
So
never let the facts get in the way of a really good story. Just remember that. I take that back. I'm not, just in case someone's out there saying Brett fucking lies on everything. No, I don't. I try and be as factual as I can.
Well, he won World Junior Championships one year. Next year, he finished 3rd in the World Championships, 2015 Beijing World Champs. Super long jumper, fast enough he could run like in the 100 meters for China if he devoted himself to it. He'd be on the 4x100 meter relay if he wanted to, and just great athlete all round. Show him something to do like juggling a hacky sack or something and pretty much do it straight away. I'm like, man, you should go play soccer. You would be making millions because you'd be so fast and your foot-eye coordination is so good. It'll take you a little while to pick up the game, but you just have things that other people don't.
Yeah.
So another great story about him. So after the Olympics, you get back to China. I had about a week before I could go home. And I wanted to go home pretty quickly. And nobody really wanted to do any training after Olympics, that sort of thing. So during one session, I was just practicing some high jump myself. And I had the bar up, had like the women's 4x100 meter relay team like clapping me in. And then Eddie comes over, and I was doing maybe like a meter and a half, what I built up to over like 30 minutes. And then Eddie goes over, puts the bar up to 2 meters, comes in off maybe 8 steps and just floats over it.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, That's the difference between me and you. Gravity just doesn't.
Yeah, put you back in your place, right? What did he say when you said go play soccer?
I said, yeah, maybe.
Maybe just cruising. So what do you believe after working with hundreds and hundreds of athletes, aside from these physical attributes and the advantages that they have, physiologically, what makes a super athlete? What makes someone the best of the best?
Depends on the sport. Depends on the sport in as much that, say, for like in some sports, work ethic and commitment matter much more than other sports.
Right.
In some sports, your perception and your visual acuity matter much more than in other sports.
Give me an example. What do you mean?
So first of all, I'll give you work ethic and commitment. So say something like rugby league, that work ethic and commitment would matter much more than it would in a 100-meter sprint. I can tell you could put in 20,000 hours of training into a 100-meter sprint, but you will not be world class unless your parents are born the right way.
Yeah.
Okay. Or have the right genetic stock. That's as simple as like you can take Daniel Call's Talent Code or any of these books that's like sort of say that, hey, you can put time into anything and you'll become world class at it if you do it enough. No, any PE teacher or track and field coach will tell you, sorry, that's not the truth. Might be in some situations, but not all situations. And then things like visual acuity and perception action coupling, like your ability to see a situation, recognize the patterns in that situation, and then act on them. In team sports like basketball, evasion sports, rugby league, rugby union, that stuff can be really important. That might be more important than, say, physiological attributes like how strong you are, or how well you move. It's that ability to pattern recognize, and that's a trait as well. That's something that you've been probably given from your parents, and if not, it's been trained in you from a young age. So there's different attributes to different sports, and it depends so much on that sport what attributes will help you succeed.
It's like Lewis Hamilton, right? I always look at the top 10 rankings in F1, and I'm like, that guy is always up in the top 3, like if not number 1. And we're talking split seconds. Like the difference of that, it could be any one of those drivers, but it's always seems to be him. He's always up there. Yeah. And I mean, look, that could be his hand-eye coordination or his reaction time is a split second better than everyone else, which allows him to be in that top spot. It's you're really looking at those minute, fine, not even 1%ers. They're the 0.0001%ers that make that difference, which is crazy. Mate, do you advise on diet and nutrition with any of your athletes, or is that sort of you still digging deep into that arena?
Yeah, look, in my current role, we've got a team of S&C coaches, sports nutritionists, technical coaches, like that coach MMA, sports scientists, physical therapists, and so basically at the moment I just tie them into what we need to do for the fighters.
Right.
And one thing I didn't say is we so UFC PI, it's any rostered fighter can use it. And that's predominantly what happens in Las Vegas. At the Shanghai Institute, we also have an academy. So these are fighters from China that haven't been signed to the UFC yet, but on the verge of making it. And so they're our in-house academy. There's about 25 of them. And we train them like we would a world champion UFC fighter and get them across the line. But what I'm getting to with this is that our nutritionists and the actual nutrition for the sport of MMA is actually there's been a lot of really interesting things that I've picked up around MMA, especially around the weight cutting considerations around that. And we've got one of the sort of world experts on weight cutting. For people that don't understand the sort of practicalities of it, if you're going to fight, say, at 77 kgs, you will normally walk around that between 90 to 95 kgs. It's
crazy. Yeah.
You'll probably lose some weight during your training to get down around 10 to 15% of that weight in the last week. 15% is pushing it, 10% is pretty pretty comfortable to do this.
Yeah.
In that last week. So 77 kgs, maybe you're about 85 kgs. You'll lose about 10% in the last week through a combination of reducing carbohydrates, reducing salt, reducing water in the last 24 hours, reducing fecal matter, so eating low-fiber foods, and that will basically reduce your body weight by around 10%. So you weigh in and then you rehydrate, re-eat, and then get ready to go. So there's been some really unique and interesting things that I've learned around of just the finer detail around weight cuts and what people are doing in the sort of combat sport space is also been really interesting.
Well, Masvidal had to drop 20 pounds in 6 days.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty crazy. And
it all depends. So again, there's certain like inherent attributes that you might have, like in terms of your ability, how much muscle mass you have, how much muscle glycogen you have. If you've been eating lots of carbohydrates and you come to me and lots of fiber, and you come to me weighing 80 kgs, I'd be pretty confident saying that we could get you to 72 kgs in 6 days. You know what I mean? Which would be around like 16 pounds. Masvidal did another, say, 4 pounds on top of that, so it's around 12%. But those things are doable, depending on where you're starting at. If you come to me and you've been on a low-carb diet, you hardly eat any vegetables, so there's no fiber, and you don't drink much water, then I'd be like, whoa, maybe we can only do 4 or 5. Yeah. So,
well, funnily enough, I'm 13 days into the carnivore diet. I'm giving that a bit of a whirl, right? Have you ever done that? Have you ever done it?
No, not 100%, not 100%, just eating meat. I haven't. How's it going?
I'm telling you, like I said, I think I'm 12, what is it, Thursday here today? Yeah, I'm 12 days in, eat nothing but meat. I have had a little bit of bacon, but mate, I honestly feel fucking really good. Like the fourth day in, I had my best ever workout pump I've ever had. Right, I actually had the guy on my podcast just before this, the guy's protocols that I'm following, Kevin Stock. He's a doctor actually over in Canada. And, you know, there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to do it. You know, I'm sitting I was weighing in at about 101, right? A little bit extra body fat is, you know, I mean, I'm quite muscular by nature anyway, but I wanted to lose probably a good 10, 15 kilos, right? Just to sort of see where my body gets back to. The first couple of weeks of COVID, I pretty much ate everything in the house, and I was like, I've got to do something about it. So I've found my passion to get back into training because I lost it there for a while. And my body, I was noticing, you know, I eat really clean throughout the weeks, pretty clean. As you know, I was having veggies, you know, meat, veggies. In the weekends, you know, I'd obviously have my cheat days and and eat whatever, to be honest. But I was this time around, you know, like when we met, like it was quite easy for me to lose body fat by just reducing carbs. This time around, it's a lot harder by trying to reduce carbs. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to see what just a carnivore diet does. Also, I've read a lot around the autoimmune, you know, benefits that can come from it. So, you know, I'm a friend of mine who's been doing it. He said it massively reduced his asthma to where he really doesn't even feel like he has asthma anymore. And, you know, I'm asthmatic and I've got allergies and so forth. So I was like, I'm just going to give it a whirl for 30 days. So, mate, some amazing benefits. Apparently I've had a really good experience because some people can get, you know, sort of blocked up. Mate, I'm still going to the toilet once a day. Super energy levels are nice throughout the entire day. There's been no crashes. I've had like maybe 2 or 3 cravings. That's about it. You know, so this whole eating, you know, ribeye, beautiful. Like, I mean, I know you love meat, but
I was just going to say, I'm the prime candidate for the carnivore.
Exactly. I look forward to this. This is the best and easiest diet that I've ever, or let's call it eating protocols. This is the easiest protocols I've ever followed in my life. Like I'm going out to dinner on Friday and we're going to Hurricanes. Right, I already know what I'm getting. I'll be getting the huge T-bone. I'll probably get a rack of ribs as well. And like, I actually am really looking forward to it. And I was never someone, this is interesting. I was never someone that really, I don't enjoy vegetables. I eat them because I feel that my body needs it. That's what I thought. But I tell you what, man, I've been feeling really good up today. Again, I'm only 12 days in, but it's bloody good. I can only speak highly of it at the moment. So
look, it's definitely I've friends that have done it. They like it. Works well for them. So there's definitely there's got to be something to it, right?
Well, that's it.
My take on the situation.
And when you dig deep into it, the standard questions of, but where are you getting your fiber from? Where are you getting your vitamins from? It's like, well, meat obviously, and has all of those vitamins and essential vitamins that your body needs. And the thing around fiber, right? Those are where this comes from is our beliefs and our education that we've been, taught to believe to be true. Like the food pyramid is, and I'm sure you'd agree, probably the worst thing ever created nutritionally for the world. Eat all these serves of grains and all these serves of bread and butter and milk and, all the stuff that isn't really beneficial for us. But what do you find from a performance level? Because I was talking to someone and, when your body is, let's say, utilizing fat, because that's really all it's got to utilize from an energy source. How do you have any of athletes that are, on just a meat-based protocol, or primarily meat, or do you think carbohydrates and veggies are actually, super important when it comes to an athlete?
So yeah, for high intensity exercise, guaranteed, like carbohydrates are. Now, in saying that, there will be some people that it might be more beneficial for them to have a lower carbohydrate approach, just based on other outside factors, not necessarily performance in that sport. It might be general health factors or something like that. But for performance and high intensity activities, there's carbohydrate will make a significant difference.
And what type of carbohydrate? What's the best type of, if people are wanting to fuel up, what are the best carbs to be consuming for performance?
Well, that's well, it depends, right? But it ranges. So it can be in terms of actual performance, what you store in muscle glycogen. I don't think it really matters whether it's low GI or high GI in terms of what you take in. Now, after a training session for recovery, or during a training session, or during a run, it wants to be high glycemic index, so it gets absorbed fast,
right?
And then doesn't cause as much gut distress. So there's those considerations. But even, say, for instance, the sweet sensation on your tongue, like you would have seen the last World Cup, Soccer World Cup was really popular with carbohydrate mouth rinses. So basically you take a carbohydrate in your mouth, rinse it around and spit it out. So you don't actually ingest anything.
Right.
You just get this sweet sensation, taste sweet sensation, and that actually raises your performance as well. So with or without consuming the carbohydrate, you'll get improvements in performance just by altering your taste buds.
I mean, could that be linked to your dopamine though? Is serotonin caused from the glucose, the feel good feeling?
Yeah, for sure. There's a few different mechanisms that might be at play there. But look, if there is going to be a benefit doing low carb dieting, it's probably going to be in really ultra endurance sports.
Yeah.
But they've actually looked at that, and they've done this in Australia, comparing like a ketogenic diet with, say, moderate carbohydrate-based diet in race walkers, 10K race walkers.
Yeah.
They increase their fat oxidation rates during exercise. That means it spares glycogen, so it means they don't have to dip into their muscle glycogen stores, so they've got more on tap. But then they actually go slower, so in their time trial performances and things like that. So even for most athletes, look, so even for endurance sports, it looks like even if it's glycogen sparing, it means it lets you hold on to your glycogen. It's also glycogen impairing, which means that you can't use it or can't access those higher intensities as well as what you can when you have a little bit more carbohydrate. Now, that's for a performance aspect. There's different considerations around general health, and certain people, certain different diets and so on. But yeah, look, and even I'll go back to a weight cutting aspect. If you're, say, Brett, you come to me and you go, I'm on a carnivore diet, I need to cut 10% of my body fat for a fight in 7 days, I'm like, yeah, that's going to be pretty hard, mate, because all it's going to come from, We don't have any stored glycogen in your muscle. We don't have any fiber probably in your gut. We could probably change the meat sources, go from red meats to white meats. That would
so a leaner cut, do you mean?
What's that?
So like leaner meat?
Yeah. Well,
actually, let's do a real case example. Okay, so I'm on the carnivore diet. Just in transparency, in the first 12 days, I've lost 4 kilos as well. Now, given that, I started at 101, so I'm not starting super lean already. What would and again, I know there's no exact science to this without all the other variables and so forth, but I'm on a carnivore diet and I want to lose 10 kilos. What can I do that you think could help?
In a week?
Nah, not in a week. I'm not that desperate. However long it, safely but quickly. You know me, I like to do things as fast as I possibly can, but I also don't like to break the boat. So
if you like the carnivore diet, I'll be like, cool. Now just make sure you're actually in some type of small to moderate calorie deficit. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're going to be consuming enough protein. Normally the things, my rules are, and this is just to give you some leeway, always eat as many calories as you can while staying the same or losing weight. Always eat as much carbohydrate as you can while staying the same or losing weight. Now, if you want to eat a carnivore diet, then you would say, okay, eat as much calories as I can while losing weight. So if you find that you can lose weight at 2,700 calories,
right,
for me, do it with that. Why go to 2,000 calories when you could be losing weight at 2,700?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm sitting around roughly at around 2,500. I think I'm eating that, 2,600. Cool. And it seems to be sort of moving.
Yeah, cool. What will have happened is you have chronic weight loss and acute weight loss. Acute weight loss comes from 3 compartments: muscle glycogen, water, and fiber in your stomach or fecal matter in your stomach. And the acute weight loss that you would have had in the last 12 days will be from reductions in muscle glycogen stores.
Yeah.
Okay. And also every time it's about a ratio for every about 1.5 to 2. So for instance, if you have 500 grams of muscle glycogen in your body, you're going to also carry another 1.5 liters or 1.5 kgs of water. So when you stop that muscle glycogen, it'll be depleted just by the nature of your diet and you're still training, right? You're going to be losing weight naturally, acutely through those mechanisms. You'll be carrying around less water. You won't be retaining as much water. And also you won't have fiber sitting in your stomach, which can weigh you down. So once you get over that acute weight loss period, maybe it'll happen in like 2 weeks or something, and your weight might start settling down. Then I'd be like, hey, let's look at what the calories are looking like. Keep eating the way you're eating if you really like it, and then modify that. Try and have as many calories as you can while losing weight. If you're not losing weight, drop it down a little bit. Don't go drastic, and keep monitoring that.
Yeah, I'm eating twice a day, so I'm only eating twice a day, which fits for me, right? And this goes back to the original premise: is finding out what works well for you is what's going to be sustainable, right? I don't eat to live; I live to eat, right? Sorry, I eat to live, not live to eat, right? Wrong way around.
I live to eat, mate. I live to eat.
Really? Like, I don't get me wrong. I love eating. I love food, but. I would be the person who would, if there was a magic pill that you could take in the morning and you didn't have to eat all day and you weren't hungry and all of that, I'd take that, right? Yeah. There's at least 2.5 hours of the day I'd get back, right, from not having to sit down and eat or prepare or do anything like that. But from my perspective, one of the biggest things that I've felt is, even though I totally get that, that the kilos lost so far is probably a lot of water, even though I'm drinking more water than I've ever drunk, I think.
I took one of the things too with meat consumption, because there's more urea now, your kidneys have to work a bit more, so you'll probably urinate a bit more, and in turn you drink a bit more with higher meat consumption. It was one thing I used to drink heaps with when I was doing like paleo back in the day.
Yeah.
Go on.
I haven't because I've really been paying attention to this. Like I've actually been writing down every day, like my energy levels, how I'm feeling, what's my workouts like, just so I can sort of gauge what this is really about. Without going into the deep science of it. I should have got tests and blood tests. Actually, do you know anyone in the Gold Coast that that would be a good person to go to so I can get all my tests done?
Man, just any GP should be able to do it. If you've got a good relationship with your GP.
No, I don't. I don't go to the doctor, so I got no GP. But we could talk about that offline. Yeah, that'd be great. So, but the biggest thing for me is I just feel leaner and my stomach looks a lot leaner and I'm not bloated anymore. You know, like that in itself from just removing carbohydrates is a blessing. You know, like I'd walk around after meals feeling like I was fat, and it was just because my stomach was, you know, bloated, right? So I'm going to look to, obviously, you know, who knows, I might continue on like this, but for me, it's that elimination, see what my body reacts to. The only thing I hope it doesn't react to is potato, because I fucking love potato. I could literally do a meat and potatoes forever. But hopefully when I reintroduce that, it goes, oh, welcome back.
Just good Kiwi lad, eh?
Yeah, meat and potatoes. I'm telling you, I'd be a happy man. Awesome, mate. I've just checked out the time. I mean, we could speak for hours here, and I might want to get you back for a round 2 and go a bit of a deep science session, because I always love these conversations. But mate, any final last words for the listeners?
Man, always ask yourself what your grandmother would say.
I like that.
And that's probably a good thing. You know what I mean?
Science has screwed us that much that, you know, sometimes it's just about going back to the basics. Awesome. Sure. All right, mate. Well, appreciate it, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And mate, looking forward to seeing how everything progresses for you and the family. Super exciting.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Thanks for having me on, man. And let me know how you go with the diet too. I'll be interested.
Absolutely.